Kevin Hollingray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to speak after my honourable friend, the member for Darlington. He makes some very, very strong points in his speech, which I absolutely concur with. I want to speak to Lord's Amendment 80, and he's one of the constituencies. I know pretty well, having been there, spent a bit of time there prior to the last election, but it's his kind of a constituency that's affected by Lord's Amendment 80 and the government's decision it wants to resist that amendment, which I can't support. In my view, it is a classic policy of levelling down, not levelling up. And I think the Minister's absolutely right, and both Ministers involved in this are good friends of mine, and I don't want to make their life more difficult in any shape or form. And he's absolutely right when he says this policy across the board is a significant improvement on anything we've had before. That's absolutely right. He said that in his speech. I agree with that. What I don't agree with is when he said it is fair. I don't believe it is fair, and that must be the basic criteria in which we judge any proposals, not least these. I think everybody would accept, the Minister, and it's quite clear from this, there is a £900 million transfer happening here that was introduced just as the bill came into report stage. £900 million. And that is a direct transfer from household wealth into somewhere else. That is what it is, assets, household wealth, into somewhere else. And that's probably into healthcare or the Treasury or wherever else it is going. And that's because it's the way the council contributions are used when it comes to the speed at which somebody reaches the cap. So, and I can live with that if we're trying to make the system more affordable, as the Minister says, if that burden of that is going to fall equally across everybody's shoulders in different parts of the country. It's also true to say, of course, in these, most people will not be affected by this because it's only people on very long care journeys that tend to get badly affected by this, but there are quite a few of those. I think by the Department's own figures, about 6,000 people a year, 10 people per constituency would be affected in this way, and most of those people have dementia. And we know there's 900,000 people in the UK today with dementia, 1.6 million people by 2040, according to Alzheimer's Society, and 70% of care home residents are sufferers from dementia. And these are the kind of people who will suffer because of these changes, because they do have very, very long care journeys and they move out of their house. So the house then is one of the assets that we were prepared to take into account when we assess what people contribute towards the care cap. The Minister said we're making these changes to make it sustainable. Well, OK, make it sustainable, but you've got to make it fair when you make it sustainable. And I don't believe this is fair. And I know we're comparing this with a system that never existed, of course. He's right to say that. But nevertheless, it was proposed. That is what was proposed, that the council contributions would count when in terms of what your contribution to the cap, the care cap. And that's the change we have made. We have made, the specific change we've made to make this more sustainable is that change. And that affects people of limited assets, limited wealth. So we are balancing this on people of lower assets, lower wealth. And that applies to households and also applies to areas, because some of the regions we represent in the north do tend to have lower assets and lower wealth. And it particularly affects people who have total wealth, assets between £75,000 and £150,000. And if you look at the research provided by the Alzheimer's Society, it's very clear for people living with dementia. If you look at the DILNOT proposals, around about 50% of people benefited fully from the care cap. So people reached the care cap, around about 50%. And that was all across all different quintiles of wealth. It was very fair how it worked. This is not. The least wealthy quintile, only 13% of people will reach the cap. 28% of the most wealthy quintile. That cannot be right. There's a huge disparity there, and that's the change we have made. That £900 million has been found by people with lower wealth. That cannot be right, and it cannot be consistent with levelling up. And if you look then in terms of how it affects different regions, only 13% of the people in the North East reach the cap, 29% of people in the South East. Where previously, again, almost every part of the country, it was about 50%. So it was obviously the amount that was covered the cap wasn't as generous, but nevertheless it was very fair across different wealth categories, quintiles, and also across different regions of the country. So I cannot see in any way, shape or form why this is fair. And what it means is, instead of us all having 10 people in our constituencies that are affected like this, some people will have more, and wealthy constituencies will have less. So I'll probably have, and other people, particularly in the North East, will have more constituents that are affected by this change, that are less generously treated because of this change. And for that reason, and because it does, in my view, level down, I cannot support the government and will vote against him this evening on Lord's Amendment 80.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam